complete and utter destruction of the Republican Party.
Manaraja.
Say we are unmuted?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're unmuted.
Thank you. Let's call ourselves to order. Meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen, Monday, May 10th. It is 7:07 p.m. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to welcome our newest member of the Select Board, Wendy Reed. Welcome aboard, Wendy. Great to have her. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for rebroadcast on the local cable channels and on the internet. The meeting is also accessible by remote participation. The instructions are: this is a Zoom meeting. It is the phone number to get in via phone is 646-558-8656. The meeting ID is 971-2042-3801, and the password is 426-687. Announcements. The annual West Newbury Garden Club plant sale will happen on the training field this Saturday from 8:30 to 11 a.m. So all you 11:30, all you gardeners out there, really good place to get lots of plants to spruce up your gardens. The annual special in town meeting will be taking place the Saturday after that, Saturday, May 22nd at 10 a.m. at the just beside the bandstand and the Hammett Park, the baseball field. Updates regarding Lower Merrimack Valley Regional COVID-19 vaccine clinic. The best place to go for that would be on the town website. You can find updates on that. Things are changing all the time, and the availability is going to be for these particular clinics will be ending not in the immediate future, but ultimately. So it's too complicated to get into all the details, but please do so. And obviously, we urge everybody to utilize the vaccines they can get locally here, which has been a great boon for our area. Finally, to subscribe to the town announcements, wnewbury.org/subscribe. First item on the agenda, I would ask the other board members that we put that back in order to allow other people that are waiting to get their items a little bit further on. So we will, I would make a motion that we put item A. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Great. That's great, great news, Dennis. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would move that we appoint Dennis Lucy to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
Further discussion?
How long is it? Typically, we make the appointments to the end of the fiscal year, so I think where we're so close to one, perhaps you go. Oh, I'm hearing the sound is super soft, so everyone be sure to speak up. If anybody watching remotely has any trouble hearing, be sure to unmute yourself and say that. But we'll all try to speak up. So, hey, Mike, do you happen to know what the term of the ZBA is and whether that should be through June 30th of 2022 or whether it's a multi-year appointment?
It's usually a multiple year appointment. I think they're 3-year terms. I don't have the it off the top of my head, which, because she'll be the remainder of Judy Gregg's term, which is one he's replacing. I don't know off the top of the head, but you could do it to the end of this year, and then we could just do it concurrently with all the other appointments.
Because, yeah, you'll have the complete list of appointees and you can just extend it past that.
Right,
that's a great suggestion.
so amending that, appoint Dennis Lucy to the zoning board of appeals until 6/30/2021.
Great.
Second. Further discussion, all in favor? Archibald, aye.
Parker,
Thank you, Dennis. So, Mike, will Dennis have to be sworn in again, even though he's already an associate member, or not?
He'll have to be sworn in. Obviously, since there's nothing currently on the zoning board of appeals docket, he might even, do it a little bit later. But yes, he has to be sworn in because he's not a incumbent in this position.
So if there's nothing that's going to happen, I mean, there's nothing on their agenda right now, and there's only 6 weeks left until the end of, he could almost, not that I would normally encourage this, but he could almost just wait until the next term to get sworn in, if that worked for him, no?
He could, the only thing that's necessary is that he be sworn in before they would convene.
Yeah.
And they're not scheduled to convene. They have no applications presently before them.
Yeah.
So they don't have applications, but I do know that they've met a couple of times. They met in March and they met on April 27th. And one of their agenda items that night was to update regulations and appeals when applying for a special permit, variance, finding, or other relief. So I know our building inspector has been working with them to kind of revisit and retool some of their regs. So I do think even though if there are no applications, they're actively at work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, obviously before they convene, he would have to be sworn in.
Okay, thanks. Next item, a request for a rain date for the plant sale, which is hopefully going to happen on Saturday, but they want to have a rain date on Sunday just in case. So it seems pretty straightforward.
Yep. Yes. So I guess we need a motion for that. So I would move that we authorize a Sunday, May 16th as a rain date for the Garden Club plant sale.
All in favor? Archibald, aye.
Actually, just a quick point I wanted to make, sort of
Okay.
Sort of feeds into the opening thing about the plants they have. So this year it's going to be something unique at the plant sale, and that there's going to be an area focused on locally grown native plants. If that's relevant to people, that's sort of the focus of the group, West Newbury Wild and Native, that is working with the Garden Club on that. That's it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good. Okay. Next item, we have a request for a special permits for the Hunt Club. One of those events is actually happening tomorrow. And these are requests for events on May 11th, May 22nd, and June 1st. They have been signed off by the police department and they certainly have done this in the past. I just wish they wouldn't wait till the last second. Excuse me. So
I moved that we approve the 3 myopia hunt dates. So it's May 11th, which is tomorrow, May 22nd, and June 1st.
discussion, all in favor?
Actually,
Aye.
just
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
quick question. So on the route that I think it's referred to as the pipe stave.
Which page? Rick?
Just make sure this one, it doesn't show up as well in the black and white. So this is page 31. I'm just curious, the route, the map is more readable online than on the printout. The printout doesn't show it well, but it actually goes up through Coffin Street property that about which there's been a lot of discussion. And I'm curious, what's going to happen to that? Is this the last time that ride is going to happen? I don't know if anybody knows that, but
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I believe it goes up through that property. In fact, it may.
Well, it looks like it's going along the power lines.
Right. It may actually loop through that property twice. So I don't know how that's going to impact it. Presumably. That's a good question. Do we know that they have approval from the new owners?
I think it's fair to Annie would know. I mean, typically Annie, who handles all this, she doesn't send it to me until it's solved.
Yeah, okay.
So I haven't asked her that specific question, but.
Yeah.
I can make a comment.
Oh, is
There we
that
go.
Annie? Okay.
They've always asked the Bouchers, and now they have asked Mike Ricci for permission. In the past they have, so I'm sure they did this time.
Okay.
Hi, Mike Ritchie's on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
They have not asked me permission, but they do have my permission.
Oh, hi, Mike.
Hi. They can certainly come through and they'll always be welcome to come through my property.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike.
No problem.
Thank you.
I guess you asked for.
So we had
question.
a motion and a second, and then we were in discussion.
Great.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Next event, special event permit is from UCAN Sports Half Marathon on June 13th. That, what day, I don't know what day of the week that is. That's
Probably. In a sec.
is that Saturday? Okay,
Yes. No, it's Sunday.
okay, Sunday.
And it looks like we do have Rich Morel on the line.
Okay.
If you have questions for him.
And in accordance with, this is in accordance with new guidelines from the governor. So road races are now an approved activity. I do have a question for Rich Morel. Are there going to be any porta potties placed in West Newbury?
Hi, everyone. This is Rich Morel. I appreciate you taking the time to consider this. No, we don't plan to have any porta potties, and we don't plan to have any aid stations on the course this year due to the situation with COVID.
So, Mike or Rich, I'm sorry. Is this what you would expect normally for a turn, or what you expect to see this year? Will it be equal to what you would see in a normal year? for participation?
Honestly, the numbers are lower than they have been traditionally. I think everyone has been taking a wait and see approach with the restrictions, and the announcement that road races could move forward was pretty recent. I think it was just April 27th. So the numbers are lower than they have been in the past.
Yeah, okay. I think, you know, with some events, there's sort of been a tradition of, you know, some, and I don't know if this fits here, with some contribution to like a local nonprofit or something. Is that anything that has been discussed before, Rich? I don't.
It has been. We've always been more than happy to make a contribution in the past. I think this in 2020, before our event was canceled, we were planning to make a contribution to a new playground that was being worked on. I think the folks from the playground committee were actually at the same meeting I was at last year. And obviously the event got canceled, so that didn't come to fruition, but we'd be more than happy to consider that again this year.
Yeah, if you could, that would be great. That would help that effort. Thank you.
So all the other, let's make sure that all the other sign-offs, we've got the chiefs have both signed off early in May, so I guess we're good to go.
So I move that we approve the holding of the half marathon on June 13th by UCAN Sports.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Rich. Good luck.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
You have a good day.
You too. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Our next request is to install temporary signage along specified town roadways in May and June to promote the sign up for the elementary school music ensembles. That I want to look at. I made some notes about that. I want to find what page that is. Hang on.
Page 37.
37. Okay.
This request came in from Kevin Barabee. I don't see Kevin on the line. And is there anyone else on related to this request? If there are questions.
Okay. I would say that we have a pretty strong history of not allowing any kind of signs in front of the 1910 building and in front of and on the training field. The other four areas would be okay. That would be my feeling. We make a special dispensation because it's been grandfathered in to allow the training field to have the sign for the garden club, but other than that, zero. And kind of the same thing for the 1910 building, to not politicize, but have advertising in front of the town hall. It implies a municipal connection to whatever is going out there.
Is that something, would it be inappropriate for that to be shown on the sign out in front of the police?
No, it already is.
Oh, okay, all right, that's right.
Yeah, that's
I
so that's
thought it was this event. Okay.
yeah, and some of this is still kind of evolved in the last couple of years because now we have much more active social media and email, e-blast that we can do. The Facebook, we are really active with posting content, and then the third clear outlet is the LED sign. So those are things that my office can do administratively without board input, which is nice. So we're able to help out groups, right. Is pretty much on request. So
okay, great. So I'll make a motion that we approve posting of signs for the Pentucket Music Boosters for well, there's a period, I guess.
They want it until the end of June, but they were a little vague. I think we should define
Right,
define the time span.
right. Yeah, so school will be out about June 20th, I think, if I remember right. At which point, at least the one in Page in front of Page becomes a little less relevant. So, I would make a motion to approve posting of signs until say June 20th at the 5 locations, Pipe Stave, along Main Street at Pipe Stave and Page area. Main Street again at the intersection with Stewart, the intersection of Church and Bridge Streets, at the intersection of Crane Neck and Main Street, and the intersection of Church Street and Main Street. Does that seem like a reasonable time frame?
Yeah. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see. Next item is the referral of the Cortlandt Lane street acceptance to town meeting pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 82, Section 21 to 24. So what is the select board's charge in this situation?
So as you know, the proposed street acceptance is included on the posted town meeting warrant. But in order to follow the statutory steps, the select board would need to approve the motion that you have in front of you tonight. And that has to be placed on file with the town clerk at least 8 days prior to the town meeting. And I do have the complete packet on the computer, so if you want me to pull up anything to so people can see the layout, let me know, and I can do a share screen.
Why don't you do it for whoever is
Sure.
listening?
Yeah, good idea.
So I'll read it.
Never understand what this feels like, but imagine looking at the nation you love and
Whereas the select board of the town of West Newbury, acting pursuant to General Law, Chapter 82, Sections 21 to 24, having deemed the common convenience and necessity require the acceptance of Cortlandt Lane as a town way, hereby lays out the Cortlandt Lane as a public way, all as shown on the plan referenced below. And whereas the boundaries of the layout of Cortlandt Lane are shown on a plan entitled Street Acceptance Plan for Cortlandt Lane dated October 4th, 2004, prepared by Apple Associates Incorporated, which plan was referred to the planning board and which plan is hereby adopted as part of this order, and all land lying within the layout of Cortlandt Lane is hereby laid out as a public way. The aforementioned plan is hereby forwarded to the town clerk for filing, and the foregoing layout is hereby reported to the town for acceptance.
So as I think the board is well aware, this layout, this subdivision was originally approved in the 90s, I believe 97. It was brought forward for acceptance as a public way in 2006 and was voted affirmatively by town meeting. But it was learned relatively recently that the street acceptance plan that you see in front of you was never properly recorded with the registry, and that needs to happen within 120 days of the town meeting vote. So for that reason, we've been back to the beginning of the process procedurally, but we largely view this as a housekeeping item because this road was always built to the subdivision standards with the anticipation that it would become public.
And it has been receiving town services in the de facto as a town accepted road.
That's
Right.
correct.
Right, which we we need to accept it because we won't be able to do that going forward if we don't accept it, because legally we can't provide those services if it's not owned by the town.
Yeah, I think on that, there might be some nuance on that on trash pickup. Mike could speak to that, but on snow, I believe that
Yeah.
you are correct.
And road repair and.
Yes, correct. Trash, I think, is something different, as we'll learn later tonight.
Okay, so,
So I would move just as you read,
okay,
that the town accept that Cortland Way.
when you want to second? Okay, discussion, are there any abutters on the meeting, Angus, that wish to speak or anything?
Everyone's muted. If there's any public comment on this, if you could please unmute yourself.
I'm Pat Ronan. I live in what you're noticing is lot 10, and I would ask that you approve it as noted.
Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Pat. Anyone else?
Talking about it yet?
I have a question. If there are any current uses that impinge on the town's right of way, how will that be handled?
Did everybody, just in case people didn't hear the question, Selectman Reed Selectperson Reed just asked if there were any presumably private uses that impinge on what would become public layout, how would those be handled? We believe there's utilities that are visible within the extension beyond the cul-de-sac, but I assume easements are in place for those. We have asked the health department for verification that any septic systems on the abutting lot 8 are entirely on private property, and we've been provided as-built showing that they are. We haven't field verified that, but the stamped as-built from the engineers say that the septic is entirely on private property, and the health agent who was here when this went forward said everyone was well aware of the layout and that all of it, was designed around that. There is some, if you've been out there, there's some, what kind of appears to be private front yard and landscaped area.
Okay, thank you. Hearing no further public comment, call the vote on acceptance of the Cortland Lane. All in favor? Aye.
Parker, aye.
Okay, so we'll make that available for your signatures. We'll put that on file with the town clerk. It's going to have to be in the next 3 days or so. So we'll send you a note tomorrow when that and some of the other things you voted tonight are ready for signature.
Okay. Next item is a discussion of town trash and recycling pickup for the Ocean Meadow development. So this item has been brought forward recently. To summarize it briefly, there does not appear, at least I could be corrected, but there did not appear to be anything on the planning board's documents of the setting up of the Ocean Meadow development, any mention of whether or not trash pickup would be carried out by the town, either for or against that. So that is not mentioned. And so issue was brought forward to the Board of Health, and they're not going to make a decision related to whether the town picks it up, just whether the feasibility of them doing it, and I guess it can be done. So this has been now brought to the select board for us to, I guess, do we have the authority to make this ultimate decision, or?
I believe so. Yeah, Mike McCarron can elaborate, but I know that Mike has recommended that the Board of Health adopt regulations that set out townwide where trash and recycling pickup takes place and where it doesn't. And I don't believe those regulations are in place. But I think, Mike, you would say this board has the authority to make this decision. Is that right?
Yeah, and in many other communities, the select board is the one that makes a decision as to whether or not a development like this gets trash pickup, and it has been judicially determined that the town has the power to do that. They can exempt condominium developments from that service. I've reviewed a number of different towns and the policies, and they are all over the field. Some have grandfathered some of the policies. Some have basically decide on a case-by-case basis, and some just do not permit. What they do is they define commercial and as being exempt, and commercial is defined as including buildings that have 4 or more dwelling units in it. So each town seems to have adopted their own determination, and the board that has made that determination ends up to be the select board.
Angus, have you heard any? I'm just wondering about the actual practicality of doing this. Would there be a central pickup? Would each unit be putting things out individually? How would that all? If it was to be done, how would that work?
I don't know. Tom Salvo, I see you on the line. Is that something you or one of your neighbors might be able to speak to?
Thank you for taking this up. I just want to defer discussion, not discussion, but comments to Steve DiPietro, because he's the chairman of our homeowners associations. So hopefully Steve can hear this and pick up.
I can. Thank you, Tom. And again, thanks to Angus, Michael, and Leah, who have been working with us on this topic. The answer to the question is currently we obviously have a private contractor. We have 56 units in the association, and each individual unit owner puts out their trash. Our buildings are comprised of either 2 or 3 units to a building.
So there would be 56 more stops for Mellow then, if that was the case. You don't have a centralized place.
We do not. So that's correct. It would be 56 stops as it currently is now.
So Steve, I don't recall. I mean, I've been in there, numerous times by bike, but I don't recall at the end of the street that runs farthest in from Main Street. I guess there's a circle at the end of that, and cul-de-sac with a circle. And is the radius of that large enough for a trash hauling truck to turn in?
Yeah, absolutely. So our current provider is a typical. We don't have anyone with any with a smaller size truck. So it's a typical trash pickup truck. So the short answer is yes. Our streets are actually wider than many of the town streets. And the radius of that circle, I think, is almost 50 feet. So that's pretty wide. And that's what the current, that circle down the end, you are correct, is used for the trash provider to provide their turnaround.
It seems to me that it would be important, before we commit Mello to going in there, that they have the opportunity, just in case they have an issue, before we commit them to going in there, we could have them look at the streets and make sure that there isn't anything that they see that's going to be problematic for them.
That's my view.
Yeah. I guess the other question I have is, personally, out of an issue, point of fairness, because there is nothing in, the original subdivision approval that precluded us picking up trash, and out of fairness, they're, as they documented, they're paying taxes just like everybody else, and it doesn't, it seems like the service should be provided. To me, at least.
No,
But-
I feel exactly the same way.
But at the same time, what concerns me is that, so we're in, 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, we're gonna be voting on a line item budget. And based on the numbers that Tom put together and provided in the email that he, the info that he supplied to Angus, it works out to, if everything is, can be prorated, it's $15,000 in the potentially $15,000 additional trash and recycling hauling, and that's not in the budget.
So let me speak to that, because I got some information late last week on a phone call with Blake Seal. So I'll paraphrase that. I thought Blake might be on tonight's call. I don't see him, but I wanted to make sure. As you know, the Board of Health awards the contract for hauling and disposal. So they really have been the point of contact over the years. So I had spoken to Blake actually probably 4 or 5, 6 weeks ago when this had come up previously. And in his email at that time, the way I read it made it seem like that development's not factored into their cost, meaning what I read into that is that they would need to adjust their cost if this development was added. Turns out it was just a semantic distinction of how Blake wrote it versus how I read it. Because when I talked to him last week, he said, no, there would not be a change to the hauling contract. And that when Mello put together their pricing, they assumed some amount of background growth in the community with subdivisions and things.
Okay.
So he said there would not be an increase to the hauling contract, which is a fixed fee contract.
Just the tonnage.
So the tonnage, and on that, the estimate was 800 pounds of trash per person per year. So just based on some very rough math, we penciled it out, Blake and I did, and Blake's estimate was it might add about $4,000 a year to trash disposal costs. Some amount for recycling, that's tough to pin down because the market's all over the place, but it's a relatively small impact. If we're right, I agree with what both, what the board members have said so far, that before you make a final decision, I'd love to have that, and I talked to Blake, I think Friday morning, and I said, Blake, can you triple check it? Because I don't want to say anything in a public meeting until I really know. And so he called back later that day and said, yeah, no, that's correct. But it would be nice to have direct contact with Mello. I hadn't thought of the issue you raised of the street radius. I think before you make a final decision, it would be good to make sure that the vendor who's actually doing the work is, that there's no wrinkles,
Right.
especially for like when you would start, because you might decide to do it and we might find out it can't be done.
What about
right away?
Also the issue of the potential those are big trucks messing up their road and everything else.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. He did say, Blake did say that Mello would need, certificate of insurance indemnifying Mello in order to provide that service.
Yeah.
So that's something I doubt would be any trouble for the.
And that would come from the homeowners.
Correct. Yeah.
Because they're no longer on a public street at that point.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I have another question, and this is almost in the form of asking a favor. So there's been a fair amount of discussion in town, and some people are participating in pickups of compostable food waste. You might have seen there are a couple of companies that would serve West Newbury. One is Black Earth Compost, and the other one's Mona Environmental. Do you think the association, and I don't know, Steve or Tom, if you would have a feel for that, but do you think the association would consider arranging for pickup of food waste separate, because they compost it and then it goes back into service as something else, as soil. Do you think your association would consider participating in something like that? That would also, from the town standpoint, reduce the increase in our tipping fees, potentially by a significant factor.
Yeah. So it's Steve DePietro again, just so I make sure I understand your question. So when you say participate, meaning residents here in the association would have to separate their trash?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Dumping off food waste in the trash, they would dump food waste in a container that would be supplied by the company that.
No.
So I can't give you a definitive answer. One, because I really don't have any input from community members, and two, it would be something that we'd have to discuss with the community and discuss at the board level. So I really don't have an answer.
Yeah, it wouldn't be mandatory. It would be just
voluntary.
If nothing else, maybe people could be encouraged. I think that both companies that I know of locally, I'm not trying to push a company or anything. It's just I think they probably offer like a single. You can do a single pickup spot, or they can set up a single pickup spot where maybe out by the mailboxes there would be a container and they pick it up. I mean, it's not my business, so you'd have to have a conversation with them. But the high probability that long term we're going to have to do that anyway.
Yep. Let me speak, Steve.
Yeah,
this is Rich Miller. I'm also part of the association here, and it's something that we can consider. But again, as Steve said, we can't just say yes right away, but it's something that we can consider. Personally, I would have no problem doing it, but you have to see other members of the association.
Right. Great. Thanks, Rich. Thanks. I appreciate that.
So what I'm hearing, I think, is that the board would be favorable to expand service to include this neighborhood upon confirmation from Mello that the trucks and the infrastructure all align, and that the orders of magnitude incremental cost is basically just the disposal, the tipping fee for the solid waste and the recycling, and that there's no incremental cost to hauling. And I'm 99% sure that's correct.
Yep.
And so you could either continue this or potentially make a motion contingent upon, verification of those items, unless there's other items.
Well, just in terms of the fact that we're going to start getting the containers and so forth, everything's going to change in a few weeks. I would make it. Why have to? Then Mello's going to have to contact these people separately and all that kind of stuff. So I would make a motion contingent on that we approve this, contingent on the fact that as you said, the financial ramifications are what were stated, and that someone from Mello goes out and makes sure that they can work in that neighborhood. You agree with that or no? Too much?
Yeah, I would kind of like to hear back, because I just, I just don't know what other wild card there might be. And there probably won't be any, but does it make a difference if we wait 2 weeks until if we have feedback? And, you know, I guess the carts are gonna be delivered sometime before the end of this month, right?
I think today was like an important day in terms of when they were, Mike, wasn't it May 10th that they were gonna start delivering?
That was my understanding.
Do we know that they, I guess they have some extra carts because
Be sure to
yeah.
speak up.
Oh, yeah, so I guess we know they have some extra carts, because they, you know, they
They're
bought
gonna sell
extra.
extra,
Exactly, they're gonna
the
sell,
double one,
yeah, to the
the
people who
second
need
one.
doubles, they're gonna sell doubles, so I guess we know that or we can be pretty confident that they have extra carts. So, you know, our next meeting is the 24th, so, you know, I'd kind of prefer to wait until we get all those things buttoned up, just in case there's a gremlin that we don't.
Okay, all right,
we haven't
I'll
imagined.
withdraw on that, okay.
But you know, overall, I think it's appropriate, personally.
This is Steve DePietro again. In light of what I heard about financial ramifications and scope, if it's okay, I'd just like to pass along some additional information that may be helpful to the board.
Yep.
So two quick things. One is, and Angus, I don't know what you may have provided the board relative to some of the discussions I know Tom and Rich had with the town as options to pick up, which was reimbursement or abatement. And in working with our attorney, we understand that that has been done in other towns relative to trash pickup. One of the reasons we mentioned it is, you know, I can't speak to our fiscal 22 budget, but historically, our trash costs have been less than what the $14,000 figure that Angus mentioned. So I just wanted to put that out there as, you know, another potential option depending on the outcome of the discussions to date. You know, the second piece of information briefly is that we started the process a couple of years ago because there was a fair amount of precedent being sent in terms of associations across the Commonwealth going to their respective cities and towns and getting, you know, an exemption to what previously was their inability to get trash pickup. And so during this process and working with Michael and Leah, although it was understanding we were ineligible, you know, we found out effectively we were eligible because, as Angus alluded to, neither in the certificate of vote approving the special permit by the planning board or in the certificate of vote approving the definitive subdivision plan, there's no reference to us not getting trash pickup. There's reference to the private way and other restrictions in terms of maintenance of the road being our association and not the town. So I just wanted to make sure that the board had that information. So again, appreciate the time and the discussion this evening.
I have kind of a follow-up question. What does this mean for the other homeowner associations in town? Does that mean that, I mean, are we only making this decision because it was not put in there?
Well, based on what was one of the other memos here, some feedback from Leah, you know, the planner, that with two of the other associations, there may have been the Daily Drive and the what's the name of the one down below? Yeah, the Cottages. Apparently, in their subdivision approvals, it was specifically stated that the town was not responsible for trash pickup.
I know. I'm just wondering, this list, either Tom or Steve, this list, are these towns whose homeowner associations had trash pickup excluded in their agreement?
I'll let Rich and Tom speak to that because they did the homework on that. I don't know, Rich or Tom.
Some of the associations did not have it in, and they talked to the township, and many of the townships just said it was the fair and equitable thing to do. That's. There was about I think I sent you the list. Well, I sent the list about a couple of years ago, but I sent the list. There's about anywhere from 37 to 45 other towns that have started this process already.
Yeah, I'm not saying I disagree with it, but I'm just wondering if it's going to become a
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if it's not, it's sort of like if it was explicitly prohibited, then I'm not changing my mind about that. Like, this is, to me, this is a special case.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the financial justification, I think, would be the same for other,
I know, but they signed. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, they're the, again, if it was explicitly said that it wasn't, that it wasn't going to be picked up, that's different than here where there was nothing ever said. And I understand out of a fairness thing, you would say, well, if it's good for one, it ought to be good for all, but
everything isn't perfect. Some people have water, have town water, some people don't have town water.
yeah, should make a blanket statement. I'm just saying, we should be aware of that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right. But also in the, when the planning board was going through the approval process for a subdivision, if one of the things in the back of a particular planning board member's head was, okay, that's a service we don't have to provide, then I'm willing to, to ask this exception, to honor this exception that we've been asked, because that's part of the overall package. Or at least that's the way it seems to me.
I'm sure it'll be back.
Yeah, it will. Yeah.
Just because we said that.
Right. Yeah, but this is, I think, this is pretty straightforward and reasonable, I think. I just think we're gonna get all the issues figured out.
Okay, so I'll plan to put this on the May 24th agenda and reach out again to Blake and also either directly or through him to Mr. Mello and make sure we get answers and put that in your next packet for the 24th. So those on the call, this will continue 2 weeks from tonight, and the agenda will be posted the prior Thursday with the Zoom login information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item is a potential using of the annex for Council on Aging programs. Angus, you want to give us a little background on this? What's been going on?
So our Council on Aging Director, Teresa Woodbury, has been working to reactivate some of the programs that had been suspended because of COVID. And I see a Teresa on the line. Is that you, Teresa, or is that someone else?
It's me.
Oh, terrific. Perfect. So Teresa came to me really initially with a request if they schedule, let's say, yoga outdoors, which is totally fine. And she's talked about limiting it to 10. There would be, I believe, masking and distancing is both going to be required. So her question was if can we use the annex as a rain date? So we started talking about, it was really over a year ago that a lot of these restrictions were voted. And so I wanted to bring it to you as it, I think as long as the turnover between events is far enough apart, so for instance, say once a day or no more than that, that we can get janitorial in there between, that goes a long way to resolve concerns I would have. And I think, I know Paul Savigny has given some guidance to Teresa as well as to Corinne up at the library about masking and distancing. So I think in terms of, janitorial, we just need to remember we don't have a janitor on staff on the weekends. So, if there was something held on a Saturday, there's really no expectation that it's going to be clean till Monday unless we start contracting for outside janitorial, which we have not ever done. So I just wanted to put it on the table for discussion. You have a nice precedent later in the packet tonight with the library. I think they did a really nice job writing up their transition toward more openness. And I think that's a good model. I've met with Paul and shared that with Teresa. I think I shared that with you, Teresa. But that's a nice template that we could use. We honestly haven't had the time to really give it much thought, but that's, I think, the direction that we're gonna go in this building. But in the interim, wanted to see how you felt about, moving toward allowing at least Council on Aging events in the annex. But we also need to think, ahead of that, what's the next step after that for outside groups and so forth. So, Teresa, did you want to supplement anything that I've said?
No, I think you mentioned that we're limiting all of our activities outside to 10 participants, just so that we can keep social distancing. So if it was to be moved inside, the max that we would have would be 10 plus the instructor.
And in addition to yoga, that's the one I keep returning to. What other types of programs are you looking to get going?
Looking for yoga, Zumba, Tai Chi, and then eventually, as things go further along, art class, quilting class back in. We're not looking for anything like our spring fling or any lunches at this point, strictly things that we can keep at social distancing.
I would be comfortable with things as long as the annexes maybe only you, as Angus said, once a day and just until we don't need massive additional cleaning issues, that's all. Angus, what is the not the pushback, but what is the demand from other organizations and so forth been to use the annex?
I'm not sure if we've still got Annie on the line. If we do, Annie, I would definitely invite you to jump in, because Annie's more on the front lines of, she gets those calls.
Yeah.
I don't really hear much. I did talk to one of our local committee members who's pretty involved with Cub Scouts, because I know he's interested in this. And I did say, we're going to be looking at a step toward opening the facility. I said what we're looking at initially is senior center programming, but I said I'm going to bring it to the board for discussion. They may want to go further than that. I mean, it's really however you want to take it, but I do know there's at the minimum Cub Scouts and I think any number of other groups that are definitely waiting for space available. Annie, is that you?
Yeah,
Hi, Annie.
it is me. We have a celebration of life. People are interested in having that. First Holy Communions, a couple of other events, and I've just put them in as reserved dates, but the building is still closed at this point.
Did you catch what she said?
Yeah, I think what she said was that she has some dates held essentially for some other events, but technically the building's still closed. So those are just, they're held dates. I think I interpreted this right, Annie.
Yes, and those dates, some of the events have 100 people. One has 75. So I'm not too sure when those would be open.
So the capacity of that building, I believe, is like 180 or 200, something like that. Yeah. And if like events are at 50%, so 100 would be two. If it's 180, that 50% of that is 90. So they couldn't do that anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't, is that what it is right now? Is it 50% capacity? Or?
It's for like the Red Sox or something, it's a quarter, but
yeah.
It's 50% for like other things. But I would rather go small.
Right, yeah, I think we're gonna be.
Yeah, I mean, I think before we go, too much further than what Teresa's asked for, I would definitely want Paul more involved.
Yeah.
We just haven't had, I mean, he and I've met a couple of times, actually a number of times, every couple of weeks we meet, we talk about it, but we haven't really had time for the last couple of months to really like bring all the staff together sound out any concerns people may have. I know we're just talking about the annex, so that's a different thing than this building. But I did talk to Paul last week about, we're going to set up a meeting, or I'll set up a meeting for next Tuesday, kind of a staff meeting, just to see how people feel about how things are going, and looking ahead to where we start, lifting some of the restrictions. What's the right way to sequence that, and what types of measures would people want to have in place in terms of potentially someone stationed at the door to let people in, that kind of thing. But that's all for this building. I think the annex, if you just deal with the Council on Aging events, maximum 10 people with the instructor, that seems to be very manageable at this point, and see how it goes.
Could the same, not rules, but same standards be applied for other groups? Maximum of 10, distancing and masks, or?
It could. I mean, the only thing that I see is just with the janitorial. So as long as there's
See, I just think whatever it is, one a day at the moment.
Right. And that would be one per weekday, and maybe one per weekend. But the point is, between Friday afternoon and Monday morning, there's no.
Right, and we don't need to be having like birthday parties on Sunday at the moment. That's not the Council on Aging is a municipal function, so they should outrank someone's birthday party. Yeah. So, what do you think? One thing per day with those restrictions, and one per weekend. I don't know.
Do we want to set a maximum head count?
Yeah, but
well, 10. That's 10 plus an instructor. So is that the limit case then for everything? Do we think?
I think for right now, I mean, we're kind of, this is kind of a bridge to what's next, and we just need the time to think through what's next.
Okay.
And we don't want to hold up Teresa trying to figure out the bigger picture.
Yeah. Okay. So we need a motion for this.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have the time to write up, so you know exactly what you're saying, and we just haven't had the time to do that.
Well, we've talked about it. So
but I think if I think it's clear what you're saying, so we could write that up and post it based on the direction that you give.
Okay. So, well, I'll make a motion that we would open up the annex to a group size. I guess it's a maximum of 11, which in the case of the Council on Aging would include 10 participants and 1 instructor, and no more than 1 event per day and 1 event on a week over the weekend.
Yeah, with the Council on Aging having first pick.
And also, you didn't say this, but the masks and distancing is still required, as you know.
Right, correct, okay. So it was a hybrid. We each should half of it, so you have the second.
All in favor? Aye.
Any hey, Teresa, what would be the soonest that you might actually need to use the space or want to use the space?
I haven't looked at the weather. We were hoping to start classes the second or third week in May. I would say I could probably push it off until June. Again, I mean, the only time that I see us using it is if it's rainy or, raw or windy out.
I was just thinking if you had an effective date of May 24th, that just gives me time to talk to Wayne, who can talk to John, and just make, so it's not like we're getting calls tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
That's a good point.
Okay, all right, that's a good point. Yeah, so yeah, amend it to, which is 2 days after town meeting.
Yep. Hey, Annie, how does that all sound to you?
That sounds great, because right now it's just the Red Cross, and I don't really have anybody else going in there, but it gives me parameters.
Good, thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question about the bathrooms? Are we going to close them off? Or are we going to keep them open? Do we not have a preference?
I didn't catch that.
The restaurants.
The restrooms, are we going to keep them open close them off, keep one open.
I think the library's closing them, is that right? And they're having the upstairs one be the staff restroom. It sure would make cleaning a lot easier if the restrooms weren't open.
But given
But
the.
is that a public facility? Can we really do that?
Well, also, given the population, so the demographic may have more need for, people may need to use the bathroom, so.
Teresa, what are residents using now for facilities for the outside classes?
We haven't started outside classes. This is just my second week back from being off on medical. So I'm really, trying to get in touch with our instructors and trying to figure out where we're going to do our outside classes. So we've decided that we can use the bandstand or the gazebo out there if we need some shade rather than getting a tent or a covering. So right now, people are doing it via Zoom but I would say if we do have outside classes, then we wouldn't have a facility available for somebody to use.
It seems like, I don't know, I just feel you have to.
Yeah, I would, Teresa, you had suggested one of the options is one bathroom. Maybe we should try to limit it, just to limit the cleaning, because it's only 10 people or 11 people, including the instructor. That should be one bathroom, ought to be plenty.
Yep.
And that way.
I would suggest one bathroom. I don't think we would need both.
Right.
And Teresa, this probably goes without saying, but just obviously there are some form of kitchen facilities in the annex. It doesn't sound like there's any intent to use those. So we're just looking at the assembly space, not like the refrigerator things.
Correct. We would not be using the refrigerator, or I don't anticipate that we'd be even going into that part of the annex.
Okay.
See, Wendy, aren't you glad you voted on whether to use the bathroom or not?
Okay, so I've got a motion with an effective date of May 24th to open the annex for use with a maximum of 11 participants at a time, no more than one event per day, nor one event per weekend. With Council on Aging have first priority on scheduling and availability. Masks and social distancing requirements would apply and would keep one of the two bathrooms locked and would not include use of the fridge or kind of quasi kitchen area. So that was the motion on the floor.
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor?
Did we have it? Did you second?
I did.
Okay, great.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Teresa.
Middle Street Bridge.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the Middle Street Bridge. We don't have much new information since the last update, which was the report that the estimated costs have gone up significantly. We are in correspondence with the city of Newburyport on how that affects their position on the bridge. As you know, we have an agreement in place that runs through September that was approved by a unanimous vote of the city council last June or July. But obviously with the change price tag, that's going to affect how everybody looks at the project. So I think, I wanted to give the board a chance. Obviously, we've got a town meeting article on the warrant for the 22nd to authorize $600,000 toward this project. In addition, we have an active MassWorks grant from the Commonwealth, which is continuing to fund the engineering and permitting process. And so our current posture is to continue to go forward with design and permitting, and to try to get a fully permitted project that's shovel ready, partly because that would put us in a position to put the project out to bid. With the costs being what they are, there wouldn't be, in my opinion, any sense to do that if you didn't have the appropriation to award the contract. But it could make the project, if it's fully permitted and shovel ready, it could make it more attractive potentially for other grant funds, such as if there was a federal stimulus that came along. I do think having a shovel ready project is worthwhile. But beyond that, I know the board members had some thoughts about how else you might want to think about this project, or what you might want to do.
Well,
such as,
I guess, we were thinking we might relook at the possibility of repair of the existing bridge. And that is probably a long shot, but we will ask the engineering company that has been developing the current design to take
machine
and
machine.
Depending upon what we get from them for response, it may make sense to talk with another engineering firm that would not be biased in any way. So we're just kind of this is a new topic. We're kind of playing with ideas at this point. So I don't know, Wendy or Archie, do you want to elaborate on that at all?
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
I would just say that I think we should go ahead with getting the project permitted, in light of there could be some additional financial assistance from the federal government. This would certainly be a good infrastructure project if such things come to pass. Supporting putting the money away into stabilization does not preclude, would not mandate it to then spend that money on the bridge. It would be in the stabilization account. If we don't use it for the bridge in the coming fiscal year, then it can be either used for other things, or next year we don't have to fund the capital stabilization account to the same level that we do this year. But at the moment, I think we should go forward with the project. It's certainly very disappointing that the costs have escalated to the degree they have. Something that we knew it was going to be an expensive project. We did not think it was going to be this expensive.
And it's also disappointing that it sounds like Newburyport City Council may not support it. So that's why at this point, we need to keep our options open. It seems like that bridge is an important link for our community to Newburyport. Yeah, we need to try to keep our options open at little or no cost.
Okay, so if what I've heard is that we'll contact the design engineer, invite them to put together a separate scope to basically look at the repair option. And as I've discussed with the board, going back a few years, that was looked at, it was put on the table, it was talked about at a number of staff meetings, including with Mass DOT. And you know, we were given a strong sense that that was not a realistic option, but to this day, it's not ever been looked at as a standalone project and to really show why it can't work. And so I think given the escalation in estimated costs, I think this makes a lot of sense to really get an objective look at that. My first approach would be to talk to the current design engineer. They're obviously most familiar with it. Get a scope and budget estimate. If that looks good, we could go forward. If that looks like we want to get a second opinion, we could shop that scope around and at some point bring back to this, you know, depending on the price to look at that, it may be something that could be absorbed in the operating budget. If not, I would bring it back to the board, and actually I think I'll bring it back to you guys either way. But we could either go forward based on existing funding or potentially would need to find some funding to look at that as a kind of, because it will be going back a few years to kind of early in the process. So
I'm going to ask this out of ignorance. Do we know if have the engineers actually done borings to get down to bedrock, or is this all theoretical, or has anyone actually stuck something in the ground and tested?
Actually, that's a good question, because they did geotechnical work. Actually, I happened to go through there twice on my bike while they were out there doing the geotechnical. Yeah, this goes back 2 years now, but I just happened to ride through there on 2 different days when they were out there doing their borings, and I stopped and talked with them. So somebody has that data, you know, the geotechnical test data.
So it's real data. It's not pie in the sky data.
No, it's real data. Yeah, and it had to be in order to move forward with the design.
Well, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because they had to establish, in order to move along with the design that is currently in process, they needed all that data.
As you'd think you'd have to, like the weight of the stones and the whole nine yards. Yeah.
okay, good. So that, I think that's a good path going forward. So, you could take a vote. I think I've got a clear sense of the board, so I don't think a vote is needed on something like this.
Okay.
I think I understand where you'd like to go. That makes sense.
I'd like to go over the bridge.
In a car.
Okay. Review, next item, review of town meeting motions, logistical planning. So how do we want to do this?
So you have in your packet some draft special town meeting motions that Mike prepared last week, and then early today, we've got draft annual town meeting motions. So obviously you just got these a short time ago, probably haven't had a chance to read them, but I could, you know, pull them up on the screen and we can talk through them. But generally, you know, and Mike, you can jump in here too, Mike, but I think we would want to, you know, get clear on who's making the motions.
So to comment on that, when we did our other outdoor meetings, I think we drew straws, and whoever got the short straw did all the right reading. And I think it speeds things up. It creates less confusion, like having to wait for somebody from the water department to come up to read their motion and stuff. Having a designated reader, I think, speeds things up. It doesn't. You lose a little bit of the feeling of who the water people are versus who, but I think it speeds things up, and that's what we're trying to do outside. So I don't know. I thought it was better to do it that way outside. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I thought that worked fine, and we'll just draw straws again.
And it's fun to do it at the very last second, because then you don't know.
Yeah, that's right. And you don't have to write over it. It's 2/3 of it. It's a 2/3 chance that you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Actually, that's bad.
Mike, as you were putting together these draft motions, were there any questions that you had that you wanted to ask the board
Oh,
about?
okay,
Or were they
so-
pretty straightforward?
On the special, Article 13 is, it's comma rather than a period under 9,000.
Okay.
I still got my eyes.
There were actually a couple other minor typos. I didn't mark them up, but I figured we.
But
could
that's
see
an
them.
important one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I can go through those and make those changes. Usually when I print these up, I would do a large print one so that the person reading it is
Flying something?
no, it's something I found to do. I know Rick did it last year. You had the large print one, and that kind of made it a little easier when you're reading them on the fly. So, okay. I'll go through that for any typos or the like. I did include a new draft with all the quantum of motions for the vote. And it's basically, it just comes down to it. They're all majority votes, except for anything from a capital stabilization fund, which would then require 2/3. And that's both in the special and the annual. And
Mike, what about 15 into the capital stabilization? Is
no,
that's majority?
that is majority now. That was a change that they made in the Municipal Modernization Act, that putting it in there. The only real outlier is on the special town meeting, Article 7, which is actually a 9/10 vote.
Right.
That's the outlier. But everything else is.
What about 8? Because those are previous years.
The reason for that is that the difference between 7 and 8, and I checked this with the town accountant, is that in 7, they spent more money than they had. In 8, they had the money, but it didn't get appropriated to that account. And so it went into free cash. So when you have a circumstance where it's a prior expenditure, but you had the money, you only need a majority vote. It's only the super majorities is when people overspend what they should have.
Yeah, and the other thing in that Article 7, that particular $287.57 is very special. 287.
Well, we had Stephanie will attest that she had to do a lot of digging and going back to find where this actually even came from. So for articles that I wanted to get some input from the board on, the first one would be, we had talked about giving an instruction to the board, to the Board of Water Commissioners concerning on the annual town meeting.
No, I think
on Article 4, and I drafted one up kind of out of whole cloth. I didn't know exactly what you wanted, but essentially the gist was that you wanted the Board of Water Commissioners to hold a public hearing prior to setting rates.
Oh, I think it's good.
And I assume that if that's setting rates for fiscal year 2023, because I assume that the ones for fiscal year 2022 will have already been set. That's a question I have.
I think that's, unlike some other communities that perhaps have a bylaw that prescribes that the rates are evaluated annually. My understanding here is that they're only reviewed basically when they're changed. So the rates that we have in place today were voted, I believe, in November of 2019. And I know that the Water Commission has advised that the proposed budget that they put forward for next year would not require an increase in rates. So I think they just intend to keep the same rates until FY23 anyway.
But I think that was something the board wanted to know, is at least to start the process where they would do this, so that the public would be informed as to how the rate setting process is
Have
done.
a public hearing to say the rates are the same.
I see,
I
that's
think
where,
that's
yeah, like in
okay.
the town, that's in the town I used to work for, it was, we had a
Someone might say that's still too
every
high.
October,
Yeah.
you had to look at rates, even if you didn't change them, you had to look at them in a public hearing. I thought it was great.
I think it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was,
Mike, maybe what we're thinking about is,
change that to 22.
instead of specifying for fiscal year 23, you could say it holds a annual public hearing, perhaps, and maybe give them discretion on when in the season that makes sense. What I would think a fall hearing might, I know that's when they get their rate study done. It tends to be in the fall. But, to let them set what's the right time of year, but then to basically do it annually. I would think it should say an advertised public hearing, because while I know, we put up a notice, I think it ought to get in the paper as a legal notice.
Good.
I've been surprised, that's one thing that surprised me, like that there's no hearing for water rates. It's just surprising. So this would resolve that.
so what you're suggesting is that I just make it as a general comment that's ongoing, not limited to just 1 year, but that it'll be a general instruction that they do this yearly.
That's right. So maybe it's something along the lines of, instructs the Board of Water Commissioners establishes a schedule to conduct a advertised public hearing, once per year, based on a, regular schedule. Something like that. We can wordsmith it, leading up, but I think the important thing tonight is to capture the intent.
So, I mean, so basically is, I think what I've done is that, but we just have to wordsmith it to have it as a general instruction that it's going to be ongoing, that it not only include next year, but the year after that. And, even if the rates are going to stay the same, they should have an advertised public hearing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like we have the annual tax hearing in November, same kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay, well, this is a new thing that we haven't done before, so I just wanted your input onto it, but that's good.
You could just delete the phrase for fiscal year 2023 and that would work.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Fiscal year 2023 and say annually, so that or is it clear otherwise it'd be repetitive?
Prior to setting the rates.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can put annually just to.
How about prior to setting the rates in no less than annually, the Board of Water Commissioners holds an advertised public hearing in which the methodology for determination of water rates be discussed.
Yeah, that's, I think I have direction. I think we can work on that. So. There was some discussion in the prior Selectmen's meeting about the quantum of vote for the approval of Cortlandt Lane. And my research indicated that, because I was concerned, I wanted to give the board the power of eminent domain if they chose to exercise it. But in doing so, would that require a 2/3 vote? I did the research on that, and that so long as there is no appropriation, only a majority vote is necessary to grant the board the power of eminent domain. So in that motion for the acceptance of Cortlandt Lane, it gives the whole gamut of powers to the board by gift, deed, or eminent domain even. So I just wanted to point that out, that I did take a look at that. And so it's going to be just a majority vote that's going to be necessary to approve that article.
Mike, on 11 in the
11 annual or special?
on the annual, that's where you're divvying up the revenues. Do we have to state those in the motion, or just say, or should we say just as is set forth? It's much easier this way. That's all.
Yeah, we've adopted that on the last couple of town meetings, where basically it's a little bit more formal than Casey has suggested a motion. Simply, I move that the article be accepted as stated. But yes, I mean, you can, and I've done that a couple of times in there where essentially is I ask that that you don't, Casey will read the entire article. And so the town meeting members will be informed as to what it is, but the person making the motion can certainly say as set forth in the article, just as long as we're not changing anything, in the article. And that works not only for that particular one, the community preservation one, but also all of the revolving fund articles.
Okay.
And with the dog waste bylaw, I simply reference the FinCom booklet where it's all written out.
That's good. You could have a little dog waste emoji on the.
We put that in the motion?
So what about other things? Just any other housekeeping things about the meeting itself?
Wendy, you'd had a suggestion that I think is good.
Yeah, somebody suggested to me that given the relatively high number of unfilled positions we have on committees and boards right now, it might be good to have a table next to where people sign in, just with a flyer on each position, what it does, maybe have people from the board there to talk about it. I don't know, that puts the onus on Angus's department to pull that together.
We have a good list of appointments, and it's not that many compared to others, and not that I totally favor what you said, but it's not that many. We're really well served with all the volunteers we have, but yes, there are a handful of openings, and some like FinCom where we absolutely need to get a full FinCom. So yeah, it's great. We can put together a list of all the current committee openings, and actually with the end of the fiscal year coming and your own election is going to create like 5 or 6 vacancies there. So
no, can we somehow announce it so that people are aware of it? In other words, people get their little sticker and they go sit down, and they might not pay any attention. How can we make them pay attention?
The table's right next to where you sign in to get your ballot. It would be really effective if a member from the board was actually there to talk to people, but that may be difficult to pull off. But at a minimum.
You mean from each
Yeah,
board?
like somebody from the Concom there to talk to people that might be interested.
Yeah, I wonder, somebody from the Concom, the FinCom, what other boards are lacking?
There's a list on the webpage. It's a little bit out of date, but it's sometime this year, so it's probably not too out of date. FinCom,
I guess you could put it out to the boards that prior to the town meeting, they could maybe set up a couple of tables where there could be a board member there to discuss it with people coming in. And they could be put on the opposite side of the board of registrars so that, I mean, if you can get some boards to, want to try to do that.
So I'm looking at the page from the volunteer link on the town website. And this is as of November 2020, so fairly recent. And I don't know what's changed. So Finance Committee, Council on Aging had 2 open positions as of that time. Energy Advisory Committee had 1. Cable Advisory Committee had 1. Cultural Council, which they can have a number of people. So there's open positions, but I wouldn't say that they have a lot.
They have a lot of.
Yeah, it's just by statute, that could be like 19 or 15 people. And then
I think it's 30.
Historic District Commission. So that was it.
Oh, so.
But there are going to be more vacancies with Wendy's.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And with the end of the fiscal year coming up, not everyone may be reappointed. So I think it's a, lot of.
So we'll have to have a table with some really good pastries or something so people go over.
Serve food. Serve food.
Okay.
So, maybe we could do like a 1-pager with hyperlinks and contact names. And that way, if there's in-person conversation, great, but we give people something they can bring home and, learn more, contact a rep to learn more. It's a great idea.
No, but it's also people, I don't think I could do that. It's probably too, but if they actually talk to somebody that does it, oh, it's only, this many hours or whatever, it might turn the tide.
Right.
Actually talking to someone, I think is good. Yeah. Okay. So how do we do that? I mean, we said it's a good, but how do we make this happen?
So we can. I'll work with Mike and Annie in my office. We'll put together. We have a good list. We'll just format it nicely. And one thing that this is a potentially can of worms. I'm not looking to open a can of worms, but early in my time here, in my first couple of months, I was looking to assemble all of the committee charges or kind of the underlying document of Park and Rec Commission, or either just pick one, like when were they established, what's their powers and authorities, and I was able to find that for a number of the committees, but there were definitely a number of them where I didn't find anything. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's not. And so when we found charges, committee charges, we put them on the website. We didn't always find it. So back in the early 2000s, there was a town committee handbook that the select board at that point had approved. And it did say that when a committee is established, a charge would be established. So it would always be clear, like, what are they there for? So I do think, we have some housekeeping on that, because a couple of these are very well, most of them I think are pretty well defined, but some of them aren't. And, even something like the Cable Advisory Committee, with the discussions in the recent weeks, they've effectively served as the board's proxy in terms of approving expenses over the years, and that's all seemed to work well, but it doesn't actually say that anywhere. So it might be nice from a housekeeping standpoint to have a charge that sets out that that's part of their role, just for example. So otherwise, I would say we could have a little thumbnail with the charge of each committee, but I can't offer that because we don't have that.
Yep. Well, it's a good idea. So, if we can have, if we can get something out there at the entrance, and ideally, if there was a member from each committee present, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I'll just do a quick share screen. I know we don't have a whole lot of people left with us, but if you go to the town website and what's this? If you click on volunteer, we do try to keep this list pretty current. We don't update it every day, but we updated it last November 18th. So it's a good reference if people are.
Okay, so now we have a zoning board. We need an associate member then.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And the Energy Advisory Committee, I guess we need to show that's now energy and sustainability.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
Okay. So do we, I forget at this point, do we have a rain date, and who's gonna make the call? What's the deal on that?
So the Finance Committee booklet does specify a rain date of Sunday, the 23rd.
Okay,
You know, I don't think anyone ever said that, but I think that's what's up there.
I
So
don't
that's-
think anyone
No,
decided.
no one ever said that, but that's what it is, because that's what is said it is,
Okay.
which is fine. I think it
Okay.
makes sense.
For some reason, I thought that there had been some loose conversation about that.
I'm pretty sure Casey had advised against publishing a rain date
Yeah,
because she felt like if the morning of, it looks like it's gonna be rainy, but maybe it's gonna clear by 1 or
Yeah.
2,
Yeah.
that she as moderator could say, we're gonna adjourn for 4 hours.
that's right.
Now she doesn't really have that option,
Yeah.
so I think it's, but Mike, it would be the moderator, wouldn't it, that would make that decision?
Yeah, the moderator has, there are two different methods that could be used. One is the moderator, prior to the date of town meeting, could announce that, you know, because of the inclement weather conditions, that she was exercising her power as town moderator under this particular statute to move it to the scheduling of a town meeting to a date certain, which in this case would probably be the next day. The second methodology that could be used is that at least she and I and one other town meeting member actually appear at 10 o'clock and basically announce there isn't a quorum and adjourn the meeting to a date certain. So you can literally, you know, make the judgment call, you know, as of that day. So like if it's pelting rain, you know, that wasn't expected on the day of the town meeting, we could literally do it that way. So there are two options. If it's predicted that it's going to be inclement weather, she can do it right before, and she can do it up, you know, based upon just having a minimum number of people there.
Anything else? Harbor Master MOU. Couple of minor changes from previous memorandums of understanding that we have had with them, but slight increase in the town of West Newbury's contribution. Angus, do you feel it's okay?
I think it is. I think for the service that we get, it's a real bargain. We need to remind ourselves that everything that's done pursuant to the Clean Vessels Act is reimbursed 75% from the Commonwealth under our CBA grant. And so the portion of costs that is borne by the taxpayer is a quarter of the clean vessel costs, and then it's 100% of the services that are not associated with the pump out grant. So that would be like the patrols in the weekends during the boating season. So basically from Memorial Day to the early fall. You know, I got this fairly recently. I haven't spent much time with it. I wanted to refer it to you so you're aware it's ongoing. I would have no concern if you wanted to table it for 2 weeks. One thing that, you know, I've talked about a number of times with the harbor master is, and we've got a general agreement on, is like when they do the patrols, what the dates and times, but that's not actually memorialized other than an email. So it'd probably be good to have that as a clear attachment. That way it's all in one place. It does reference an addendum A or an attachment A, but when you look at that, it's specific in terms of like what pump out services are, but it doesn't get into like schedules and those kinds of things. So, you know, what I thought we could do tonight is if there are any other questions or issues you'd like me to look into, I could do that, but there's not any real urgency. I could bring this back, maybe not in 2 weeks, maybe in 4, just so, because we got some other things in 2 weeks that are urgent that I'd rather prioritize. But one big change in here, which I had talked to Neil Harrington going back a while, and I personally think is great, is this would be for a 3-year term.
Yeah.
As opposed to we're doing this every year, and it's just like one more thing that we all have to do. So I had suggested to him a while back, can we just do a multi-year agreement and not have to do this every year? He thought that was a fine idea. And with the cost increases that they've proposed, they have not put in an escalator over those 3 years. So that's not a bad thing, because that gives us some budget stability for 3 years.
That's a good point too.
Yeah.
I would say that Article 7 of it, a little, if we're gonna be fussy about it, it might be a little more well-defined, like on an as-needed basis. Well, if someone calls for a pump out, can they get it within the same weekend? Do they have to wait 4 weeks? I mean, what is the actual, time frame that somebody might actually get the service?
Mm-hmm.
And also, periodic patrols that could be one a year. That's not
Yeah, I was wondering about
very
that.
well defined.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I had to look up, is a vessel a vehicle? And I did learn something that one of the broader definitions of a vehicle is that it can float. It's usually on land, but it can be on the water, a vehicle. So I learned something.
I would say on Article 8 on the, right now they're explicitly responsible for those costs of garaging, maintenance and upkeep, and they're looking to transfer that back to us. I'd like to understand that better. And if we do ultimately agree to that, I think we ought to have some language in that there's some amount provided at the beginning of the season with a not to exceed. So it's not just like a,
okay.
Because that was kind of a curveball that I haven't, it's not something we talked about. It just showed up in the written draft. So that's part of why I wouldn't recommend it. That you take action
That's
tonight.
very open-ended.
Yeah. And is there likely funding in the waterways fund?
Yeah, that's right. So we've got the waterways fund that's got the 50% of the boat excise is deposited into that.
Okay.
So that balance goes up every year, and we use that to cover the portion that's not in the operating budget.
Okay.
Which we couldn't do forever. We could do it for 5 or 6, 7 years. But it also depends if the harbor committee, starts spending more of that for things like a mooring study, then at some point we're going to have to transfer the full cost back into the operating budget.
Yeah.
It's pretty small in the scheme of things, but as you know, it all goes to the bottom line. So
but ultimately though, if the harbor people come up with a mooring scheme, then that will generate revenue too, because there'll be more boat excise tax.
That's for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I have corresponded with Brad Dorr about, encouraging them to meet to accept the report from the consultant from August and to come present that to the board.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a while ago.
Last August, yeah.
So if there is a mooring field, I wonder if there would be a cost to use a mooring too. I mean,
Absolutely. Like I just paid my mooring fee in Rockport, for example.
and those are municipal.
So that has nothing to do with the excise tax. It's municipal mooring.
Yeah,
So,
okay,
so you pay an excise tax for the boat, But if you, that's even if just the boat sitting in your front yard. But then if, or where it's so-called used during the summer, that's where, but then there is a mooring fee itself on top of that. And that's in Rockport, it's actually quite, I think, quite reasonable, $200.
Yeah, but if there's I mean, that'll cover quite a bit of the
Yeah,
cost.
so if you had 15 moorings, it's $3,000. Okay, where are we?
All right, so we'll bring this back. I'll plan to bring this back at the first meeting in June, just to give us a little bit.
How about, I know, so that how about that we get a report on how many times they actually did go up the Merrimack? Like,
in terms of patrols.
How many periodic things did they actually do? And how many pump outs did they do?
The pump outs we get, because we have to document all of that to the.
Oh, that's right, okay.
Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, so that's part of the regular reports that Andy and I put together for that. I won't say I studied them. You know, I get them, I put them under cover letter, I pass them all. I'm happy to share them. You guys might want to dig into the details, but as far as patrols, that would be a fine thing to add. And then,
I mean, maybe they did 30 or maybe they did 2. We don't even know.
Well, I was
record of the fees or any fines? Do they submit that information?
I don't know if there have been any fines, because I think that if fines were issued, we would need to collect them. So I think we would be aware. But I'll ask him about all of that. And also just, and he's new, Willem's new. He's been the assistant there for a number of years, but Ray Pike was there forever and he was terrific. You know, we might invite Willem just to meet you guys and just get to know each other. That would be great. You know, with Zoom, it's so much easier. You're not like creating an imposition to invite someone to a meeting.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I assume they must come up at least once a day on weekends, don't they?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah.
But they do? Or
during the weekend? Yeah, as part of this agreement, they do.
But it just says periodic.
But in fact, they do. Yeah. I think what, you know, remember when we put this together, it was kind of, you know, uncharted territory, because the
no pun intended.
Yeah, the basis of this was always the pump out agreement.
Right.
And then we only expanded that level of service just two years ago. So I remember when we wrote it initially, we wanted to be clear, but a little bit squishy because it was still new and we wanted to see how it would go.
Well, the other thing is we could just on Facebook, people always complain about noise on the river, and you could see if the number of complaints are down versus previously.
We definitely had some anecdotal feedback from some of the neighbors who were contacting them the first summer here, and were making me aware of the issues, and I was having to tell them that at that time we had no enforcement presence whatsoever, which didn't seem acceptable to anybody. And I did definitely this following season hear from a lot of residents who said, we see the patrols, we're so thankful, but I'm sure they probably have, you know, numbers of
okay, well, I wasn't aware of that. Okay, that's good.
Yeah. When I got here, there were a handful, not a lot of people, but a handful of people who were residents who were very, very unhappy about the speed of cigarette boats, about boats, you know, pulling tubers without spotters, you know, creating wakes that were disruptive to docks and to, you know, there were a handful of people who were really, really, really unhappy, and they're all, to my knowledge, happier.
Maybe not happy, but happier.
At least on this issue. I don't know what other issues.
Okay, our next item that we had delayed is to reorganize the select board. In that vein, we need to select a clerk and a chairperson.
There's also mentioned a vice chair.
Yeah, we've never had that before. I don't think we've ever had.
I think it'd be good.
I don't know if we've ever had that.
Personally, I think that'd be a good thing to have. I don't.
Okay.
Where did it? I mean, where did it come? It's in here.
Yeah, I talked to Mike, and I think you said vice chair, right?
They have in the past had one. Usually they have, either that or they temporary appoint one.
If Mike said it, must be true, right?
And then again, some years they might not have had one. And what they've done is, obviously a temporary appointment of chair in the event that the chairperson was unavailable.
There you have it.
Okay, we always just did, I don't know, we had the clerk be that person.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would make a motion to nominate Rick Parker to go forward with the next year's board as chairperson. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I'll abstain. So I'd like to nominate somebody for vice chair, but I don't know who's I know Wendy, you're just.
I don't think it should be me. What is the clerk supposed to do?
Let me look behind
The
your
clerk has, once a year, the clerk has one document that you have to sign. I forget what it is.
Well, actually, yeah, that's right. There is one.
There is one document that only the clerk of the select.
Right, I don't remember what it is.
It looks like Angus has the full story.
No, but one thing I've thought about, one of the kind of administrative things with this transition to a new form of government is back when I started 3 years ago, there was a huge amount of correspondence going to the Selectmen at Newbury email account. Since I've been here, I know there's quite a lot less. A lot more is coming to mind. And one thing looking ahead, there could be a lot of benefit for everybody to kind of reactivate. I mean, people still use that. We get some comments, but typically there are things sent to their copy to me, and Annie and I track that. It's a relatively small number of correspondence. We might want to reactivate that as like a more of a primary place for people to send their ideas. Because ideally, if I can keep my office focused on the things we're already working on, and just the day-to-day workload, and have the elected officials be more on the front lines with getting, whether it's a complaint about a leaf blower or whether it's this or that, and then you bring it to me, and but just to set up more of like a division of labor where, so maybe the clerk but one of the downsides of that is you don't want to have a quorum of people checking an email account because that could constitute deliberation.
Right.
Maybe the clerk ends up being someone who's checking that email account regularly and corresponding, receiving it and maybe sending outgoing correspondence, something that, I mean, it's just an idea, but something like that could work out nicely.
So
Additionally, Angus, I believe the clerk is necessary doesn't they sign off on the annual determination of the setting of the tax rate and whether or not, it's singular tax rate?
With the gateway, yeah, with the BLS gateway.
Right, but in addition to that, I'm not 100% sure of this, but it could very well be a possibility that the clerk has to also of the board might have to sign off on bonds.
That may be. I don't know. I know I typically feel like I've gotten the chair signature, but you might be right, Mike. I'm not
Yeah, I mean, and obviously it's sometimes it's me. So I mean, certifying, for the board. So, but that might be a possibility. I haven't had one for a while, so I can't remember. But so there could be some advantage to having a clerk.
No, there was, I should remember what it was, but 3 months ago, there was a document that as clerk, I had to sign. And it was, obviously wasn't that consequential, but I do recall that the point was made that it had to be signed by the clerk. And, I don't think.
No, it's not, it's something else, yeah.
I don't recall what it was, but it was a funny nuance, I guess. In any event, moving on, nominate Archie as vice chair, which probably might have to pinch hit for me once.
Second.
You want to comment on it? Okay.
Okay.
Well,
So all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
I'm gonna nominate Wendy Reed for clerk. Clerk of the work.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nice.
Great. Congratulations to you all.
Did I hear a sigh of relief?
Yeah.
So also school building committee, that's definitely, time sensitive to get that appointment made
Right,
tonight.
because they have a meeting tomorrow.
There is a meeting tomorrow night, but there's also a process that Mike knows better than I do. But there's some process that actually goes through the state, and there's
You have
some
to be vetted.
hoops you have to jump through. So whomever may be appointed tonight wouldn't be official yet, but hopefully they could get started by going to tomorrow night's meeting. Let's start to get up to speed on that.
Can we talk about that at all? Anybody have any thoughts?
I mean, I'm willing to do it, but I have a commitment tomorrow night. So I can't.
Yeah, I guess we have to think about the other appointments too, but I mean, I guess if, I can do that. But I'll probably want to shed something else.
Okay, so you're on two
CPC
things,
and
right?
the,
Okay.
and the capital investment.
Either one of those.
So,
Yeah, and I could take one of those.
yeah, or I could stay on one of them and shed one.
Well, and don't make your availability tomorrow night determinative on, if you think you're the, if you want to be on the school building committee, I'm on the committee. I'll be at the meeting tomorrow night. I think I've only missed maybe one meeting since I've been here. So normally Glenn and I are both there. But if whomever is appointed, can't make it tomorrow night, I don't think that's a, huge problem. There's not any big votes or anything.
Does anybody feel strongly?
Rick, I think you're gonna, I think Wendy would be.
Okay.
Would be better on.
I think you will have your hands full as chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Archie can probably attest to that.
okay.
So what's involved in this vetting process?
It's not, I mean, he said vetting, it's like, we just need to send some paperwork to the state and they send it back. It's just getting sworn in, but it's something more than that. I reached out to Jonathan Seymour late last week to ask him to remind me what's involved. I haven't heard back from him yet, but I just remember it doesn't take immediate effect. That's the point. It's not as simple as just getting sworn in.
Like you wouldn't be able to vote until the state approves that you're on. I don't know what they do, but
Right.
yeah.
Was it the state, the school financial?
Yeah, the Mass School Building Authority.
Yeah, Mass School, so that's the state agency.
Yeah, because the school building committee has like real authority like approving change orders or dipping into contingency. So it's a committee that has real financial authority.
Yeah.
So I think it's that's the
And you're
process of-
spending the state's money.
yeah, so it's getting officially on their list, and it's not like a background check or anything like that. So I think vetting might be, it's just some hoops you gotta jump through.
Angus, they let you on, so.
The bar's pretty low, so.
Better watch it on the chair committee.
Okay, so finally, do we want to deal with the other committees now, or wait till the end of?
Well, so
the year?
it sounds like, but I didn't hear a motion in a second, so.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So I move that Wendy be our school building committee representative.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And you're gonna abstain?
Yep.
Great. All right, so once I hear from Jonathan, I'll let them know that you were appointed, and so I know I sent out the agenda and the backup materials. I don't know if anyone had a chance to look at those. I don't know if you can see those. I know I can, but I'm a member of the committee. so
I actually.
That was all accessible? Okay, great.
I didn't read the whole, I mean, I saw.
No, but yeah, but the links work. is the
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Okay.
I have in the past when we've gotten those, I generally try to read them because it's just good to keep up with.
Yep,
what's happening there.
So, and then the other committee designations, you could either take up tonight or at a future meeting. If you do take them up tonight, I would respectfully suggest, you can do what you want, of course, but that you make it effective as of July 1st, just for continuity. And also, I mean, it sounds like a small report, but those town reports, it's just nice to not have an asterisk and, oh, this
Right.
person through May and then this person, it's just a cleaner report if the appointments coincide with the fiscal year.
Okay, well,
Why don't we just get them out of the way?
Yeah, we're on a roll. So
Yeah.
I nominate Archie for the investment policy committee representative of the select board.
That's fine.
Effective, which you are currently, but effective for this new term, July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. Second.
I already seconded.
Oh, okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And I'll nominate Wendy for the select board representative to the CPC, effective July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022.
Second. All in favor? Aye. You didn't vote.
Oh, I did. I thought I did. Maybe I did. Aye.
Okay.
Apparently my mind, I'm getting fatigued.
So do you want to stay on the council?
You want to stay on that or?
Yeah.
I'll do it if you don't want to.
No, I'm good with staying, if you don't mind, I'm good with staying. on that.
Okay, okay.
I move that Rick Parker.
That one's not killing it.
Yeah, and it's good to stay in touch with what's happening. I'm happy on that committee, that is.
All right, I move Rick Parker be the select board representative on the capital improvement committee, effective July 1st, 2020.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you. All right, we'll update the appointment list and when the time comes, the web pages as well.
So Angus, you want to?
Sure.
Got a couple of announcements.
Yep. So the item M, I know this was on your last agenda that we'd issued an RFQ for affordable housing consulting. We've received a couple of very high quality proposals. Turns out there's only 7 approved monitoring agents in the whole Commonwealth, and we happen to get proposals from 2 of them. So we felt like we did pretty well. and they were both known entities to us by reputation. They both had really good proposals. Leah and I interviewed them both, and one stood out. So we did go ahead and notify LBS or Lynn Sweet that we're going to engage her firm. And, the scope is outlined in front of you. A lot of, work went into this last fall with Mike and Leah. We're not in that bad a shape. The one thing that we haven't been doing as a community over the years is the annual report that we're supposed to be sending to DHCD every year for the 13 local action units. So she's going to help get us current with that and then set up a process where that'll happen annually going forward. And then the big thing, which has been a concern, is when the time comes that we get notice that one of the local action units is being put up for sale, we have a finite amount of time to find a qualified buyer. So now we're going to have a vendor under contract that we just pick up the phone and they'll spring into action. And that's a huge relief, because that's been a major concern of ours for a couple of years, is that could happen at any time. And so that's great. So there's real progress. There's a lot that it took a while to get here. And then the third part of the scope is when the time is right, we'd like to have, a broader community discussion about the idea of a housing trust, what the pros and
So
cons
can they
are.
help us on that?
Yeah, they can help us understand what's involved with setting up a trust and the pros and cons and what kind of, administrative responsibilities. It's somewhat similar to like a CPA, because it's basically a grant making entity, except it doesn't have the town meeting. They can approve grants directly. It doesn't then go to town meeting. But what that, I was in Westford.
No, but I mean, but they assisted other towns in setting these up. That's
Yes,
my question.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So when you said the time is right, it's interesting. I mean, I've had a small handful of people ask me, at varying times in the last few months about that, about what we're going to do and specifically about a trust.
Mhm.
What do you see as the gating items in terms of time?
I mean, I have a presentation I've given to the CPC that I'd be prepared to give any time to this board that I think would be really helpful.
Yeah.
We penciled it in on a couple of agendas as like potential.
I
And
killed
then
it
it
because
gets
we
to be
didn't have time.
9:40 at night and
Right.
it's just not the right. So
Right.
that's it. I mean, talk to me when we're not working 15-hour days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's just, we can talk about it, but to actually advance the discussion,
Yeah.
in my experience, once you put something out there, there's an expectation that it's going to happen like right away.
Yeah.
And when we look ahead and for weeks to come, I mean, what our workload, so that's it. When the time is right is when we can breathe, is basically. I will tell you at a staff level, Leah and I don't see any near or medium-term benefit to a trust, but we spent a lot more time on housing than most people, and I don't expect people would just accept that. Like, people need to understand, what are the pros and cons, but there's a big learning curve on housing. And so I hope at a future agenda, we can get, more not at, 9:20 or 9:30 at night, but actually, more of the kind of prime time on the agenda and invite people in and have a discussion about housing policy, because there's a lot to it. And I think you were there for the CPC discussion a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
So the idea is to have that same kind of discussion, just so people are realistic about what they want to do about housing and why. If you want to do it because it's the right thing to do, there's certain things you can do. If you want to do it because it's going to resolve 40B, that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean,
So those are the things that people need to kind of talk about honestly.
Yeah, I mean, my take on 40B at this point in time, what to do about 40B is we can't, we don't have it within our capacity to.
We can't build ourselves out.
Yeah, we can't build ourselves out of it. So we have to really, I think we have to be concerned about what's right for the town of West Newbury, sort of, structurally, socially, and meeting the demand of the town.
Mhm.
Seems to
Which
me.
is great
Yeah.
if everybody understands that. But
Yeah.
if you put a lot of time and effort and kind of energy and I guess political capital into getting town meeting votes to, whether it's to appropriate funds or whether it's to make town land available for development or those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you're just creating a couple of units.
Yeah.
And then you get hit with a 40B. People need to know that doing these good things is not going to solve 40B.
Right.
It's just got to be clear. Otherwise, people can get very upset if they say,
I thought this.
was going to solve our housing
gonna
problem.
do it.
Because when people say we have a housing problem, they mean different things. Some people mean people can't afford a place to live, and that's our housing problem. Other people mean that we're subject to 40B. That's a very different housing problem.
That's a good point, yeah.
So could we schedule maybe like a public listening session or just on that?
I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great.
Could
Maybe,
we do it soon?
yeah, like in June.
Yeah.
I think in June, shortly after
I
town
think
meeting.
that
would
would
be
address
great.
a lot of, because I've heard some of the same comments.
Yeah.
that Eric was referring to.
No, I think that'd be great. Yeah. Yeah, Lee and I have talked about that very idea, that I think a lot of good could come from that. At least as to kind of level set, like where we are and what our options are. Because, money is not, like, we have money in this account, we have money in CPA.
Well, not infinite.
No,
amounts,
but the point, but
At least to create the structure, we have enough money to create the structure.
Right.
We don't have enough money to create structures.
Yeah, not structures. Yeah. The administrative,
Yeah.
that's type of structure. Good
But,
point.
that's also part of it is, okay, where does the responsibility rest? Like, whose job is it? But those are all things that need to be talked about.
So would this consultant be involved in the listening?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, she could be. Yeah. I know a lot about this stuff, and this town has not begun to tap like I used to present at statewide conferences on this regularly. So there's a lot that we haven't even really talked about. We talked about it at CPC. We've talked about it certainly at a staff level, but we haven't had like a real discussion about housing in the almost 3 years I've been here. And so, yeah, we could bring her in at a couple of $100 an hour, but you guys haven't even like heard from me and the town planner.
Yeah.
Like, we have a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, we could have her, but like, we haven't even begun to.
I know, I'm just looking at
Yeah.
all the demands on your time.
No, I already wrote the presentation. I mean, there's such a learning curve on some of this, but it's all written up. It's some of the challenges or some of the things that people say they want to do are difficult or impossible to do under the state restrictions and have it count as affordable housing. So aging in place, senior housing with local preference. You can only have local preference if you demonstrate that your demographics justify it. Accessory apartments, people say they want to do that. Well, those aren't going to count unless the units to be rented are subject to an affirmative fair marketing program, which means that homeowner doesn't get to choose who they rent. So there's things like that once people understand, they're like, oh, okay, it's not so simple. So those are the kinds of things that, if we start at 6 or 7, instead of 9:30, like we can really go into that and see where we want to go.
Well, maybe next meeting, we should try to come up with a date for that. I don't think at this, at 9:25 at night that we want to try to grab, unless somebody has a great idea, do we want to try to grab a night or a time now, or should we wait?
I think, yeah, let's wait, because we got a lot of issues on the table.
Right.
And yeah.
So we can shoot for June?
Yeah, June's great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Well, the other thing that we had talked about, sort of moving on to another topic, Angus, was, we talked about the idea of having a sort of a strategy session, talking about prioritizing, goals and prioritizing. That probably won't be a different meeting.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably more of, like a kind of a retreat. I mean, it'd be public, but it wouldn't, I think, what really what will really benefit is to, have the board, myself, and a kind of core group of staff who are
Yep.
basically the short list of people who are kind of like doing a lot of the work.
Yeah,
Like, okay, what's realistic? Because we got a lot of people who can't find time to take vacation, who haven't had a day off. We have a lot of, a handful of people in this town are really under duress and have been for a long time. So those, I think that issue of capacity needs to be kind of part of the conversation, because it's great to talk about what we should do or what we want to do, but what people don't talk about is what we're not going to get done if we do all these things. And so far we've managed to spin plates and keep it all going, but as you know, it's a totally unsustainable like staffing plan.
Yep.
We have, like, you can't keep running a town like this.
Yep.
It will break down.
Right. No, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Well, I guess at our next meeting, we should think about when that would be. And when you refer to that as a retreat, that would be
Public.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Public and in a town facility.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to Cancun for a week.
No, but the idea of, you're not there to like vote.
No.
Yeah.
That's for the Essex County Retirement Board.
So that's it. That's it on affordable housing. Next item is the library, starting today, is opening twice a day. They're allowing public access to certain of the facilities. So that's going to be from Monday from 10 to 7, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., Wednesdays from 10 to 4. And the details are all outlined in your packet. So that's a good step toward, normalizing things a bit. Item O, we're right in the thick of the selection process for the playgrounds. We've got 3 proposals, so those interviews will take place in televised meetings on May 19th from 2 to 5 p.m. And we've got the principal and parents group we coordinated that date and time to make sure that they could all be there. So coming out of that, we'll make a vendor selection, and then subsequent to the vendor selection, the selected vendor will do a more detailed design. Although what we have are pretty good, but they'll again get input on their specific design and then not finalize the design until another round of public input. So we really want to make sure if this gets done the right way in terms of the end product, because just like anything, it's going to be trade-offs with equipment or the surfacing or these kinds of things are going to have a tangible outcome.
And the proposals from all 3 of these are on the CPC website.
They are.
So that May 19th date, you said the parents, the involved parents, I mean, there are a number of people besides town staff.
Yep. Oh, yeah. We that's part of why it's taken the time. It's just as you know, coordinating logistics takes time. And so, we didn't want to lock in the date and time until we knew that, the principal and the parents working group, that was going to be a convenient time for, at least as many people as we could. And that'll be televised, so that'll be viewable afterwards on the town YouTube channel.
So P, Angus, do you want to,
Uh,
anything you want to,
yeah.
just for our information, do you want?
Yeah, it's just for your information. I put my head together with Mike. You know, this is partly in preparation for a meeting I had with Wendy on Tuesday as the incoming select board member. I just wanted to give her kind of a snapshot of you know, and like I said, this is the short list, like there's a longer list, but this is like, as we look at the next 6 to 8 weeks, you know, not all of this, but a lot of this, like, there's, you know, things to keep things going, whether that's soldiers and sailors or, you know, issuing borrowing for the water projects or, you know, dealing with some of the administrative aspects of the FEMA filings or.
So are we doing I was just going to ask you the one question, the ADA thing. Have we started that?
Oh yeah, we're well along.
Okay.
Yeah, we did a site visit that was attended by myself, the building inspector, representatives of Open Space Committee, representatives of the ECTA, the Trail Association.
Okay.
I think it's very positive. Site visit. We went around. We spent better part of a day going around to all the sites.
Do they deal with would this deal with the paid school too?
Yeah, that was
does.
part of it. Yeah, they looked
Okay.
at every town building and facility. They also look at town programs, and that means things like employment practices, making sure we're including the right language in our job ads, all of that.
Okay.
It's a top to bottom evaluation of our
So
compliance.
very broad base. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, we wanted to make sure before we signed the agreement that the scope specifically included not just buildings, but also some of these, you know, open spaces and things. And I think it's very positive. The initial report back, it doesn't look like there's going to be any like capital items or anything like that. There's a couple of places where some improved signage or striping would be helpful. So yeah, Sam, the building inspector, is the project manager for that. So he's kind of the primary contact with the vendor. But that's well.
I just wondered if we'd started.
Oh yeah. No, that's been underway for a couple of months now.
So that will help when the next open space and recreation plan.
Yeah. I mean, basically, yeah.
Take that full report, but
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. I mean, the personnel policies is enormously important. That's going to take a huge amount of bandwidth over the next six months or more.
Is that a committee that we need bodies for?
Yeah,
Okay, that wasn't on the list.
that's right. Because on paper, it's fully populated, but I think that we would benefit from members there. And the bylaw doesn't actually prescribe the number of people on the committee, so you could have more if you had
When you say
qualified.
it's fully populated, then.
We have three people who are appointed to the committee.
so maybe there should be more.
We can talk about that. I mean, I guess, I mean, they've had some question as to what, or at least the chair has had some question as to what they're supposed to do, because just like so much else with the personnel policies, the bylaw that creates them still references the select board or the board of selectmen is what it says. So their charge under the personnel bylaw is to undertake work at the direction of the board of selectmen. So when I started 3 years ago, they hadn't met 4 years, and I knew this was going to be an area of focus for my office, certainly. And so I, wanted to get them reactivated. And in some of the meetings I had, it was expressed that, well, we're here to report to the selectmen. So if the selectmen aren't asking us to do anything, we haven't felt that we needed to meet. Whereas now we have a town manager form of government, and under the statute, I'm responsible for personnel administration. So I have needs. So, but that committee, like, it's awkward. There's kind of a
Can't there
disconnect.
be a directive from the select board?
Well, that's why one of the memos in the other packet was from July of 2019, because I was asking the board, could you vote these priorities that I've written and I've identified so that I can get this committee to do something? And it hadn't really, I mean, it always turns back to, what am I gonna do? It always comes back on my desk, and I'm calling out for help.
Okay.
So what can we do to help then?
Get a committee that will help.
Okay.
So how do we do that? So
I think we need to find additional members. Yeah. Who can contribute.
Yeah, I mean, I think some objective, and a couple of the members on there do, they work in that profession, I think have a lot to offer. But I think, so some expertise with HR, personnel administration would be helpful. I also think some objectivity is very important.
Well, it seems like that should be a priority.
Yeah, yeah.
Things we're dealing with.
Right. Yeah, I guess it would be good to find additional people who had experience, human resources experience. And I'm sure there are multiple people in town who fit that.
So could we make a decision tonight so that could be on the table at town meeting as the openings that could be filled?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
See, that's why I was asking.
Yeah. Okay. So
does it need to be an odd number or even number? It doesn't matter.
No, there's not, it's really an advisory. The way the bylaw defines that committee is it is advisory to the select board. So that would be one of the many things that I think need to be updated with our review is here's an example.
But the board did vote to give the town manager authority over all personnel matters.
I'm just telling you what I was told by that.
I know, all I'm saying is you can't say we didn't vote it because we did.
Right, but it's not in that bylaw.
We did vote that.
Just as one example of one of the things that's a little different here in West Newbury than what I've seen in other towns is in many towns, the personnel committee serves as the appeal entity in the event of a staff grievance. And that's why I say like objectivity and neutrality is so important. Like not someone who's got an objective or like certainly not, in my opinion, someone who's got a role in overseeing specific personnel. To me, that's not compatible with what I would envision for a personnel committee, which would be more objective, labor law, best practices, those kinds of things. So yeah, like in my last job, the personnel committee, which almost never met, but if there was a personnel issue or if I was providing some, correspondence to an employee and it would outline their appeal procedure, it would be to appeal to the, you go to your department head first. If you're not satisfied, you go to the town manager. If you're not satisfied, you go to the personnel committee. Whereas here, our grievance policy says you go to the select board. But the select board is also responsible for approving wages, is also responsible for approving any hire or separation of service that I might recommend. So it's kind of like the same, it's judge, jury, and executioner, right? I mean, there is no objective like personnel. So there's a number of things where I think, so rather than, to me, it's not just getting a committee appointed, it's actually thinking of what is the role of a personnel committee in this new form of government, because I think it's different than how that, in my opinion, in terms of how things should work, it's different than how it worked in the select board form of government. That might have been fine for 200 years, but it hasn't changed to reflect the form of government. So it's not just getting people on the committee. And that's where I think this other work we're doing with getting our labor council much more involved with how our personnel policies are written and how they're administered is so important. And that could lead to recommended changes in, the composition or function of a personnel committee. Maybe.
So would you prefer to wait for the?
I mean, I'm happy to have help, but as you know, from your short time on the board, and you two know very well, a lot of the specific personnel issues are incredibly complicated. Some of them are very like fact specific. I can't get into talking about any of that, you know, like, so to understand, it's hard to explain the problems when you're dealing with like personnel issues.
Yeah.
It's just, so I don't know that a committee is, I mean, I have a server full of best practices and sample policies, and I shared all of that with that committee 2 years ago. I was here till probably 12 or 1, uploading like all this and like hoping that they maybe like help pick up the ball, and it didn't. It might be unrealistic because I'm the one dealing with these issues every day, and we have issues come up all the time. I think, you know, a new one just last week. Like, it's a brand new issue that this town's never dealt with before that we got to learn about. And so we have labor council. That's a huge plus. We didn't have when I started a couple of years ago. So I think the personnel policies and administration are a huge priority. How the committee fits into that, I'm not sure, but I don't think it's necessarily like, you know, I don't think we need to hold up everything for that, because this board's always going to be more, at least in the current structure, you're always going to be more knowledgeable about what's really going on than anyone else.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, I think if we can get a scope and budget worked out with KP and we can officially roll that out, and I did send a note to staff about a week ago saying, we're working on this and we're going to schedule a date, you know, in June where we'll invite all staff together with KP to hear what's working, what's not working. We know some of that, but we'll always learn more from that for sure. And then really work diligently on that over the summer, you know, into the fall. That's my priority. Like, so the idea, you know, a committee that's now got to post meetings and take minutes, and who's going to, that's another thing, the committee to take minutes. It's like, okay, are you expecting me to take minutes? Because I got a lot of other stuff to do. I mean,
yeah. But it would still be productive to identify people who could be on the committee who have specific expert, you know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So do we need to rename the committee or establish a new committee that's more in line?
Well, it's defined by the bylaws. So until the bylaws change, it's personnel advisory committee. It's you know, works at the request of the select board. And when I first started asking why hadn't they met in 4 years, I was told well, the select board never asked us to do anything, or never asked. And in fact, it was more said, we didn't think they wanted to hear from us, kind of thing. So. You know, I mean, you know, Mike McCarron's been saying for 7 or 8 years that the lack of a dedicated HR function at the staff level is, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but one of the single biggest challenges this organization faces. And that's been his opinion for pretty much his whole time working here. And I've been saying that since my first day on the job. It's a huge problem. So.
Yeah, it's a huge exposure, not having somebody who's focused on that.
Right. So, I mean, right now, you know, the town accountants, you know, about 2 or 3 weeks into a 5-week HR boot camp. She's every Thursday, she's going to a webinar on that. She's been to a number of trainings since we hired her, because that is part of her responsibility here. But because of her workload, you know, and things happen so quickly, it's not, you know, there's still a lot that I'm dealing with anyhow. So there's a lot of challenges there. So, but we're on the right track. But it's going to take focus. It's going to take really. It's going to take, you know, myself, Stephanie, Mike McCarron. You know, we have a small number of full-time employees in this organization, other than police and dispatch, like and DPW. But in this building, We have a very small number of full-time employees. And we're gonna need to put in large numbers of hours if this is gonna get done. So that's why, you know, that means having a short list, getting through it, and not trying to do everything. So it's when we try to do everything that we. I mean, you see what goes in a single meeting, right? There's bandwidth, serious bandwidth issues. So.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, you know, what the solution is. You know?
Well, I think
one part will free up. I mean, I think it'll have a domino effect.
I've been saying that for 2.5 years, but getting KP involved so we can actually take some of the things that we know to be problems and actually have someone to actually like write the language and bring it through the process. That Mike could do that. He has the skill set to do that. I could do it. We don't have the time. So just, you know, getting a scope and budget with them, which, you know, has been months in the making, you know, we need to stay focused on that and do that. Because that's gonna, you know, that's gonna help a lot to get those policies rewritten so they're actually cohesive and thorough. A new payroll question came up today that myself and Stephanie and Caitlin, our treasurer, and Jenny, and we all said, well, this is how it was done in our old town, and this is how I understand your labor law. And there's literally nothing in our personnel policy. It's literally silent on the topic. We know what the law is, and we checked with our labor counsel, and he got back to us and said, yep, you're correct on the Fair Labor Standards Act, so do what you're doing. But it's not in the policy. And that will, not everyone will be happy with the decision, but it's the law. So those kinds of things come up all the time.
All right, it's getting late.
Yeah.
So, we had this bit about the Cable Advisory Committee, and then we're done.
Yeah, I mean, this is just some of the other stuff that's going on, so it's, if there's any questions, happy to talk about it.
So what did Newbury report? So have they been communicating with you lately about groundwater protection or?
Not so much.
Okay.
Not
You got that down here, but not really. Okay.
Right. I mean, it's been, I think, probably January. This is the last time we had a real conversation about that.
It's late to start talking about that. I'd move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay.
Aye.